Hi. I'm going to start this again because the little scroll is going around and round. Hi. My name is Jane Hyatt. I'm really excited to be here. I'm so appreciative to the organizers of this event and and really excited to be able to talk to you about my subject, which is trauma. I have been a hypnotherapist for over 30 years, working primarily with people who have trauma in the early stages of development, but also past life work and all kinds of trauma. And and as I look at the world today and the situations that are out there that cause us all so much heartache, and I look at it with eyes of love, what I see is trauma. People who are traumatized, and because you cannot be so cruel to fellow human beings if something didn't happen to you. Now, that doesn't excuse it, obviously, but it's still, if we take a minute and just come from our hearts, we recognize that the world is aching for healing. And all of you who are here, you have your own medicine that you bring to to help others. And what I bring is hypnotherapy and and an understanding that has evolved over these 30 years that I've been working. I'm also a unity minister. I've been a senior minister for 14 years, and so I feel like my work bridges spirituality and mental health, and it creates liberation for people. So I have this system. I just wrote this book. It's called Deep Medicine for Trauma: 5 Powerful Treatments for Healing that experts have overlooked. What I discovered in my research is that hypnotherapy really wasn't getting a lot of mention. There aren't a lot of books out about it that are recent. There clearly are many books on hypnotherapy, but um, I want to talk about the system because I think it's something that we can apply even without hypnotherapy if you understand the system. And and it's important for us to do that because we can't just say, "Oh, there's trauma out there," because the spiritual law, as within, so without, as without, so within. So if we are courageous enough to look at our own trauma, then we have an opportunity to heal it there. And as we lighten ourselves, we lighten the world. And we are able to lead others in this process. So I have 5 treatments. The first one is to embrace yourself, to recognize who you really are, which is the beautiful light of the divine expressing, nothing less. And I know that many of you are doing work that brings people home to that remembering. So it's the first step and it's the most important. And yet people don't go to it first because a lot of you are like, yeah, 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 I believe that. I totally believe that. But if you look at as life goes on and hard things happen and there's just all the chaos in the world around, are you really living from that knowing all the time? I know I'm not. I do my best, but I'm often not. I get off track. And so and then there were certainly times in my life that there was no way I could have believed that, not even for a minute. So I don't know where each one of you is. I'm just thinking that those of you who are drawn to this group are probably more likely to remember this truth for yourself. But the second treatment is about using the language of the deep. It feels in some ways like a secret language. Have you ever attempted to um, make a change in your life and you give yourself a pep talk and you make affirmations and lists and all of this, and it doesn't work, does it? And it doesn't work because you're not using the language that your subconscious mind understands. And your subconscious mind is where the motivation comes from. And so the work that people do that helps get at the subconscious is the work that will be effective. The subconscious speaks in the language of story and image and emotion. So when you tell a story, and you think about it, think of the stories, whether they're books or movies that you get wrapped up in, and I remember it, in high school I was watching some movie, and somebody got killed, and I'm sitting there crying, and my 5-year-old sister is like, in her big loud little kid voice, she says, "Are you crying?" And of course I'm a teenager and I'm humiliated that the whole theater now is aware of what I'm doing. But I was so wrapped up in the story and the emotion, and it was speaking to something deep in me, and it was speaking to my trauma in that particular case, which made the release of emotion make even more sense. So it's important that we use those kinds of images when we talk to ourselves. There was one man that I was working with, and he had things inside of him that needed to come out, but he was totally unaware of what was there. And he had things that were making him nuts in the moment, and he wanted to be able to calm down. But I took him into the deep, and there was a skeleton ship that appeared. Now think about that image. If you had a skeleton ship in your life, what might you find on it? It might be things that you're afraid to look at, but it might also be treasures. What is there? What is hidden for you? But you feel the power of that image, right? There was somebody who he was just having such a hard time with a breakup, and he didn't know what is my life going to be without this woman in my life. And I had him imagine, as she sailed off to her own adventure, just soaking in the salt water of wisdom, and he could feel it, and he just got so warm and so light, and it was like everything was there for him, all around him. Again, it's an image. There was a woman who she was very split from the divine in her life. She couldn't really imagine it, and in hypnotherapy she got the image of a queen bee. She saw herself as the queen bee, and all these bees were emissaries of sweetness that were bringing her nourishment in the form of honey, and she could taste the honey, and she felt precious, which was not something this woman had ever felt before. Do you start to get the idea of what I'm saying in terms of the power of images? How could you speak to yourself using images that would make you feel different? There was one woman who was reliving a trauma that had happened to her, and she had the belief that she wasn't okay, she wasn't loved. And there's so much more to the story than I have time to go through right now. I tell the whole story in my book, but in her bedroom in the childhood home, there were these lilac bushes that grew right outside her window. And when we went into the hypnotherapy, it was the lilac bushes that she remembered first, not the trauma. And at the end, she is telling herself, her childhood self, "You are a beautiful lilac bush." And she could really take it in, the beauty of who she was, instead of the idea of the trauma. Which brings me to the third treatment, and that is you have to uncover your story potions. Now, I call them story potions because, like a potion, they get inside of you. They just infiltrate every cell, and they cause you to believe things that are stories. They're not true, but they're based on something that happened, and it may factually have happened, but then you put a spin on it because you were a child. And when you had that experience, You made it mean something like, I'm not good enough. I'll never be okay. There isn't enough opportunity out there for me. So if you've had an experience like that, you need to diffuse the story potion, but you have to do it using the language of the deep. There, when you think about trauma, I said I deal especially with early childhood trauma, but there are several kinds of trauma. So there, we think typically about what happens when we're growing up, and it could be what they call big T trauma, where your father went to prison, your mother died, you were molested, somebody beat you up all the time. Those are big T traumas. But there are smaller traumas as well. There are things that an offhand comment that somebody made, or the way they persistently treated you, that made you feel like you were second class, like your options were limited. And when you have those experiences, you go through life as if you're walking with a limp, and you're not going to run a marathon because you're limping. So in discovering what has happened, what you've taken in for trauma, you have the chance to change the story. You also have trauma from prenatal, often. Um, there was one woman who conceived a baby, and there was a long story to this. She was splitting up with her husband. She had 4 kids. She met this guy who was a younger guy, and it was one of those super hot connections, and she got pregnant, and it was the start of COVID, and he was like this totally irresponsible young guy that wasn't ready for fatherhood. And she made the decision, because she's now a single working mother with 4 children, 2 to 8. She made the decision to have an abortion. But she was very spiritual, and it was really hard for her. And she came to see me when that baby would have been 2 months old. And it was so amazing what came up with that. She discovered that when she herself was 2 months old, her father had left. And when he left, her mother was just numb. She didn't have it in her to care for the baby and to give her the love and nourishment that all babies need. And so this woman had ended up with, there's something wrong with me. And it was showing up in that relationship that, she had kicked him out, but then when he didn't want to come back, then she was desperate, like, why don't you want me? Even though she knew she shouldn't be with him. And she realized that, wow, time had looped. And it allowed her to heal her relationship with her mother as well. So that's just one example. There is generational trauma, where you think this is all about you, and why am I doing what it is, but it turns out it's something in your lineage, and you can go back to that. There is past life trauma. There's even earth trauma. I tell one story in this book about this man who had past life trauma, he thought, but it turned out to be the story of the earth and how the earth was feeling through it all. And it was sort of his story, but the earth's story, and it gets weird, but it's interesting and liberating when you deal with it. So I want to make sure I don't run out of time here and respect everybody else, because I know there's so many good offerings. I would love to offer you a couple of free gifts. One is that if you go to my website, and it's in the chats there for right, the first comment. If you go to my website, janehyatt.com, and you click on to get on my mailing list, I will right away send you a free audio that will take you into this place of deep, deep relaxation and teach you how to get there repeatedly. And the other thing is, I'm offering a ceremony that is hypnosis based on New Year's Eve from 4 to 5:30. And I realize that may conflict with some of the other beautiful offerings that are happening here, or other plans that you have. But if you sign up for it, you will get a free recording as long as you share the link with somebody else. And if you do, then I'll just send you the recording of the event, whether you've been there live or not. And it's the only way actually that you can get the recording is to share the link with someone else, and then they can get the recording as well if they share the link. I'm really building up my practice, and I'm looking for ways to get more people to know who I am. Um, so those are my offers, and I hope you will read my book. I had somebody tell me yesterday that it was riveting and a page turner, and that kind of tickled me, because usually when you think about books about trauma, you don't think page turner, but it's full of stories, and it's not it's not a clinical book. I'm not a researcher. I'm somebody who loves story, and connects with people and feels the magic of the one light that is flowing through all of us. And so that's how I connect with hypnotherapy, and the book is a reflection of that. So thank you for watching this, whether you're watching it live or you caught it later. I am so happy to be here with you, and I hope I will run into many of you again.